Judge, he's written out a statement to me. I had it in hand. I printed it just for easier. I think he wants to read it, and then I'll submit it to the court, so it's just a part of the record.
Certainly. Mr. Miu.
Do you want to stand? Okay.
Yeah.
Read it to the court.
All right. Dear parents, family, and friends of Isaac, I would like to start by letting you know how deeply sorrowed I have been. I am, and I will always be, for the real fact that Isaac is not with you anymore, and that I was directly involved in his very tragic and unimaginable death at such an early age. I never meant for this tragedy to occur. My soul is broken. My heart is very heavy. And I will never be the same carrying such a heavy burden and sorrow. I pray to God for forgiveness, compassion, and love for everyone affected directly and indirectly by the outcome of this tragic event. I'm hoping that you appreciate how much I'm sorry for the outcome of those events. I'm very sorry.
So we'll have that marked as Exhibit 3, Judge.
That'll be received into the record.
That's all then from the defense, Judge.
Mr. Miu appears today in court for sentencing. Count 1 is first-degree reckless homicide, which is a Class B felony. With the dangerous weapon enhancer, the maximum possible penalty is 45 years of incarceration, initial confinement, and 20 years of extended supervision. On counts 2 through 5, Mr. Miu appears for sentencing on first-degree reckless endangerment, Class F felonies with the dangerous weapon enhancer. The maximum possible penalties are 12 and a half years initial confinement and 5 years of extended supervision. Last, count 6 is battery. That is a misdemeanor. With the dangerous weapon enhancer, he faces a maximum possible sentence of 15 months. In preparation for today's sentencing, I reviewed a number of materials. First, I reviewed the pre-sentence investigation report prepared by the Department of Corrections. It's a 43-page report that provided me with information that I knew and information that I did not know about Mr. Miu, about his victims, families, about Mr. Miu's background, about all aspects of this case, many of which were talked about today. That PSI report also included a sentencing recommendation. I also reviewed Mr. Nelson's sentencing memorandum. It was very helpful. It provided more information about Mr. Miu and his background, and I valued that information. Mr. Nelson submitted numerous letters from Mr. Miu's personal friends and coworkers. I read all of those. I also read the relevant portions of the file, including the complaint, the jury instructions, and the verdict. In a moment, I will pronounce a sentence that I believe is just and fair. When deciding on a sentence, I must consider the gravity of the offense, including the effect on the victims. I must consider Mr. Miu's character and his rehabilitative needs. I must consider the need to protect the public. The sentence must be based on the facts of the case and the law, not personal considerations, passions, or prejudices. But judges in Wisconsin have a great deal of discretion when imposing a sentence. Unlike many jurisdictions, we do not have sentencing guidelines or grids to follow. I want all of you to know that I have given this case a great deal of thought. I take my responsibility seriously. There is nothing more difficult or more solemn than imposing a sentence on another human being. As far as the gravity of the offense, the jury has spoken. Any efforts to relitigate this case are simply without merit. I firmly believe that the American criminal justice system is the best ever devised. It's not perfect, but I cannot think of a system of justice that is better at finding the truth while preserving the rights of the accused. In this case, 12 jurors reached a unanimous verdict. These 12 jurors were selected from a panel of more than 150 people. I, along with the attorneys for both sides, chose these jurors because they could be fair and impartial. The jurors came from all corners of our great county. They came from all walks of life. They were men, they were women, they were young, they were old. They listened to 8 days of intense trial testimony. They examined dozens of exhibits. They deliberated for 8 hours. In the end, they reached a unanimous verdict and found beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. Miu was guilty of reckless homicide, reckless endangerment, and battery. Now, there are 2 key takeaways from this jury's verdict that I want to mention. First, the jury rejected the state's claim that Mr. Miu intended to kill Isaac Schuman or the surviving stabbing victims. In other words, the jury rejected the most serious crimes that would have sent Mr. Miu to prison for the rest of his life. Second, the jury rejected Mr. Miu's claims of self-defense. That means Mr. Miu did not reasonably believe that he was preventing or terminating an unlawful interference with his person, or he did not reasonably believe the force used was necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to himself. This jury found Mr. Miu guilty of reckless homicide and 4 counts of reckless endangerment. These crimes are serious. They mean that Mr. Miu did not think about the consequences of his behavior and that he showed utter disregard for life when he stabbed 5 people. For that, he will be held accountable, but the court sentence must reflect the reality that it was reckless conduct that the jury found him guilty of, not intentional conduct, which is punishable much more harshly. In weighing the gravity of the offense, I considered the impact these crimes have had on the victims. The battery to Madison Cohen was unjustified. While she did not suffer any permanent physical injuries, she has mentally suffered over this entire ordeal. She described to the PSI author the toll this case has taken and continues to take on her. This offense has devastated Isaac Schuman's parents and stepfather. No parent should have to endure the loss of a child. They have had to cope with the senseless death of a loved one while enduring the weight of the criminal justice system that can be slow, confusing, and sometimes frustrating to victims. To you and to your family, there are probably no words that I can say today that will alleviate your grief. But I would be remiss for not expressing my sincere condolences to all of you. I am sorry for your loss and what you've had to endure. Although it must have been difficult, I appreciate each of you speaking today and sharing a glimpse into Isaac's life and who he was. It sounds like he was a wonderful person, bright young man who had an unlimited future.